My name is Quentin Humphrey. Everyone calls me Q for short. Just the letter Q. It's very easy to remember. So if you want to come say hi after, it's just Q. Would love to chit chat. Thank you for joining me this morning. I am the youth culture strategist at WGSN, which is one of the leading trend forecasters across the globe. Today we'll be talking about the future consumer of 2024, pretty much unpacking the aftermath of the last 2 years. So I encourage all of you actually to, if you want to take out your phones and scan this QR code, that'll take you to a very robust presentation about the future consumer. This presentation is very top line, top level, meant to inspire, give some ideas, offer some fresh perspective, but this QR code right here, this will take you to the bad boy, the biggest and baddest report that we've done in some time. So definitely encourage you to take a peek. So to kick things off, to understand this future consumer, this consumer of 2024, we want to understand how they think, how they feel, how they act, how they purchase. And so for us to dive into that, we want to understand their consumer sentiments. This is a qualitative approach to data that we take at WGSN. Before we jump into these actual future consumers, I want to unpack the 4 key sentiments that we think will be heavy hitters for 2024. Future shock, overstimulation, awe, and of course, tragic optimism. I think we can all relate to a few of these, but when I unpack them, I think we'll have a more sound understanding. So our first sentiment, and our strongest, is future shock. Future shock is the stress or distress that we have, feeling that the world is moving much faster than we can comprehend or that we can handle. I think we've all had some feelings of uncertainty and just not knowing what's going to take shape next. And over the next 2 years, we're going to see consumers start to embrace the feeling of uncertainty and find things to mitigate the stress and decompress. Future shock is all about a feeling of running a marathon, but without having a finish line. We're still trying to combat these feelings of stress and isolation, and we feel like we need to be productive and we need to stay afloat, but oftentimes that need to stay productive can have some adverse effects. A lot of these video meetings, a lot of these conferences, even being in the room with people having multiple conversations can lead to a sense of future shock and not knowing what's the outcome of that situation. We've lost a lot of our physical interactions, from hugs to kisses to handshakes. Things that made us feel warm, things that made us feel human were lost. And this idea of future shock is going to help us rebuild and re-embrace and reconnect and re-enter normalcy. This idea of uncertainty is also costing a lot of money, specifically $400 billion in 2021, meaning all of these emails, all of these Zooms, all of these Slacks, all of these constant notifications and pings are leading to a downturn in productivity. There's this notion that we can multitask, but the reality is multitasking is a myth. The more you multitask, the less efficient you are. The less efficient you are, the worse your output is. Data points to the fact that only less than 3 people can actually effectively multitask. And so when you think about your day-to-day and the consumer of 24 and their day-to-day, we need to pare this back. We need to focus on a few things and do them really well. And in doing that, we'll key in, hyper-focus, and lead to future shock. Another element of future shock that we really want to highlight is this idea of time compression. The idea that time is blurring into one. We were all sitting at home, we were locked down, we didn't know what would come next, and days started to just blur together. Time felt like a non-existent component of our day-to-day lives. A study out of the University of Santa Cruz found that people who played VR games oftentimes lost track of time because they were inundated with all these senses. All these games, all these immersive experiences totally catapulted their time into a place where they felt like everything felt the same. All days were one day. But when it comes to future shock, we're also our worst enemies. We expect to see a lot of this in 2024 where people dive deeper into screen time, but they're more intentional about what they're doing on the screen. It's not just mindless scrolling or just looking through videos, scrolling on TikTok, clicking through links that don't matter. A certain level of intentionality and deliberation will be pushed through all of our screens, all of our experiences, both immersive and in the physical space. The next component, as we talk about immersive experiences, is overstimulation. We all have multiple devices. We're all highly connected to at least 3 or 4 devices on a regular day. And this is leading to a sensory overload. This sensory overload is giving rise to a sensory revolution, where we're just so inundated with all of these things going on, we don't know where to place our attention. This inability to focus on a few things is leading to a sensory overload. And moving forward into 2024, brands and consumers alike will have to find ways to mitigate this feeling of sensory overload. Like I mentioned before, we've lost sense of touch, whether it's experiencing the city, hugging our friends, getting on public transport. Nothing felt real anymore. We were reduced to just living through a screen and trying to do virtual happy hours that offered some sense of connectivity, some sense of community. That level of connectivity that was forced upon us is leading us to that overstimulation. We need to pare that back, get back into the real world, rewild ourselves, and reconnect with nature in a sense to reduce this sensory overload. Isolation and changing work patterns also made people feel affected. They were stepping outside and being hyper affected by streetlights, sounds of horns, things that they were so used to experiencing became overwhelming. All the notifications that they were used to getting felt overwhelming. Things that were once normal were now problematic. Alongside the sensorial revolution, as people are more connected than ever, digital connectivity is seeing a global spike. E-commerce shopping, V-shopping, S-commerce, all these new formats to engage with content and to engage with products are emerging and creating more options than ever. In fact, it's a paralysis. We don't know which way to go. Where do we shop first? What do we watch first? What do we click first? That's what overstimulation is about. And it's also having a real impact. A study showed that TikTok users, especially Gen Z girls, have seen a rise in Tourette's from so much TikTok usage. So all these dances that we're seeing, all this entertaining content is having a really negative effect on young women and how they're actually experiencing the real world and socializing. Along with an increase in Tourette's, there's also an increase in plastic surgery in both women and men, trying to mimic what they see on avatars and make themselves more cartoon-like as they prepare for the metaverse. In recent years, people's constant need for faster information, new content, and overall stimulus has accelerated. According to a 2019 study, global respondents reported that they used to be able to watch a 10 to 30-minute video with no problem, without feeling that they were getting bored, without feeling that they wanted to change something out. But now, that 10 to 30-minute window has significantly decreased. They can only watch a video for a few minutes now, which points to the rise in TikTok. These short format videos are more popular than ever, which again, is leading to some adverse effects for those who are over consuming them with this overstimulation of video content. Now, it's not just social interactions that have changed. According to a McKinsey, in the US alone, e-commerce saw 10 years worth of growth in just 3 months. On top of that, 75% of consumers, a whopping 75% of consumers reported to have tried a new brand, a new product, a new website, or something they hadn't consumed before, which creates endless opportunities as we look ahead for 2024 to what that looks like for consumers who are used to something simple, used to something that they can rely on, used to certainty. This idea of future shock paired with overstimulation is giving rise to new opportunities for product information, installation, and integration. McKinsey also found that in addition to these consumers who are consuming new products, new brands, new services, companies were matching their energy. They digitized 20 to 25 times faster in 2021, which is completely unprecedented. In terms of digitalization, that's not just e-commerce, that's digital programs online, micro activations, virtual happy hours, different things that just get consumers involved in their online world. This also points to the growing Web3 movement that a lot of brands are starting to dip their toes in. As overstimulation grows, as I mentioned, so will sensory overload. In 2024, sensory regulation is the antidote to sensory overload. Used by occupational therapists for years, sensory regulation has many forms depending on the diagnosis. In the digital era, it's used to prevent sensory rights. For example, having a slow morning where you don't check your phone for the first few hours, or only using one device instead of two to start your day is a way to mitigate this idea of sensory overload or participate in the sensory revolution. On to our third sentiment, tragic optimism, which simply put is cultivating a powerful and positive mindset that's not exactly a coping mechanism, but a healthy pattern that helps you get past this idea of isolation and overall negativity and downturn that the pandemic has induced. But the positivity needs to be rooted in reality for it to be helpful and healthy. Otherwise, we're in what we call toxic positivity, which is very negative. And if you think about being happy for no reason, you start to lose track of your reality. You're not in tune with the feelings and emotions of others. You're not in tune with your own feelings. You're suppressing them in an effort to be happy. With tragic optimism, it's a take at understanding the difficulties and the downturns and running with them, rolling with the punches, if you will. Tragic optimism is imperative for 2024 because for many, they're overwhelmed. And at this point, it's about moving beyond cope culture. It's about not coping through ice cream or tragic eating habits, doing things that are a little bit more intentional and that have a lot bigger of an impact on your personal productivity and your professional productivity. Now, it's no secret that we're in a very deep stage of emotional plurality, and the compassion fatigue levels are at an all-time high. So as people seek more ways for self-improvement, we're living in an unprecedented time of high advice. On TikTok, there are about 17 billion views on videos that are hashtag self-care. On Instagram, there are 60 million posts, hashtag self-care. What does that mean? Everyone's interested in improving themselves. We all want to get better. We all want to take steps to improve our well-being, to take a step in the right direction. However, let's be clear, while self-wellness and self-improvement is important, it's also important to know that this can become a cycle. You want to take steps in the right direction for self-improvement, but you don't want to be overwhelmed to the point where it feels like a cycle. You feel like a hamster wheel running in a cycle of improvement, buying products that you might not need because you think it's a part of your self-improvement regimen. It's also worth noting that this cycle of anxiety caused by constant self-improvement can lead to nihilism, where you just stop caring. You realize the road to self-improvement is never ending. You're never gonna stop. There's no top of the mountain. It's a never-ending journey, and putting that in the sense of commerce can lead to this idea of not caring, being over it. I don't need to buy more products. The last sentiment that I want to jump in through is my personal favorite, the idea of awe. Simply put, awe is the feeling of wonder we feel when we encounter something powerful. When we encounter something powerful that excites us and scares us at the same time. Awe is about wonder. And for many of us, for the past 2 years, we haven't been awed by many things. Maybe disappointed, maybe frightened, maybe scared, but not curious and inspired and frightened at the same time. And that's what awe is about as we move into 2024. This feeling brings people together, it refreshes energy, and most importantly, it leaves people inspired and connected. Researchers from the University of California, Berkeley found that experiences of awe diminish the sense of self-importance. This creates what they call a small self that seems to aid us in forming social groups. Meaning, when you're awed, when you're inspired, your ability to connect with people is that much greater. Your ability to form meaningful connections is that much greater. Scientists also believe that awe was likely a tool for humans as a survival mechanism centuries ago. For future growth, it's necessary to be awed. It's necessary to be inspired. It's necessary to be connected. As a collective emotion, awe helps the self shrink and the world expand. People typically feel small during a sense of awe, Watching a sunset, seeing a sunrise, gazing at the night sky, or even seeing a museum exhibition that you've been wanting to see, something that truly inspires you. In 2024, awe will be a great connector in a time of fragmentation. And besides making people feel more empathetic, awe has been found to reduce anxiety. The more we seek awe and the more we create experiences of awe, the less our anxiety becomes. Recently, daily awe experiences were found to reduce depression. These moments of awe can range from time spent in nature, known as an awe walk. That was me this morning when I crossed the street from my hotel, a nice 5-minute awe walk. But also listening to new music, just engaging in something that will make you feel a little bit surprised. According to one study, awe-inducing events may be one of the fastest and most powerful methods of personal change and growth. Research from neuroscientists in Germany found that using functional magnetic resonance imaging, experiences of an awe can also inspire decreases in activity in the front module. This means, the default mode network. This means respondents have low levels of stress when they're awed. Simply put, being excited, being awed, makes you happier, makes you more engaged, makes you more present and more mindful. Another key driver of awe for 2024 ties back to overstimulation and time compression. The overwhelming sense that there is never enough time for people in a day to get through what they need to get done. A study by Stanford University found that the experience of awe slows down people's perception of time. Now, I mentioned with time compression, people felt like days were all the same. Time was flying by and they couldn't tell the difference. But with awe, time seems to slow down. You're so inspired that you take a moment and you just take it all in. And while it's important to be awed and have this feeling that time's slowing down, that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting any time back in your day. But it's important to feel like you have control over the time in your day. And this will allow people to refocus, not multitask, and put more time and effort into the things that they care about the most. Now that we understand the sentiments that are driving these consumers for 2024, let's jump into who they actually are. Meet your future consumers for 2024. The regulators, the connectors, the memory makers, and the new sensorialists. We're going to kick it off with the regulators. The data smog, which is an overwhelming amount of data and information that clouds the brain, and change-averse. The regulators look to frictionless commerce to maintain control of a healthy work-life balance. The adage that uncertainty is the only certainty doesn't sit well with the regulators. After years of uncertainty and seismic change, this cohort relies on consistency as a survival mechanism. Research shows that uncertainty is more stressful than knowing something bad is definitely going to happen. When you know what tomorrow looks like, you can prepare for it. But simply not knowing brings about more stress. But for the regulators, that's not something that sits well with them. They want that confirmation. They want that definitiveness. They want to know what their products feel like. They want to know what to expect from brands. They don't like surprises. And this is particularly true for Gen X, the generation known for grunge, known for Riot Girl, and also known for their disdain of authority, are now the generation that want more certainty than ever. They want definitive action. They want to know for sure how things are going to look. Right now, this cohort is in their mid-40s to mid-50s, and they're the responsible ones. They're the heads of households. They're the CEOs of today. In fact, in 2019, 68% of CEOs in both Fortune 500 companies and Inc. 500 companies were Gen X. These are the business decision makers of tomorrow, and they want certainty. 2020 and 2021 brought a record number of work and industry changes that have forced a level of adaptation that most just weren't prepared for. However, people's brains don't have the capacity that they did pre-pandemic. A study found that employees' ability to cope with change was 50% of what it was pre-pandemic. Interestingly, the same study found that smaller changes were creating more fatigue. For instance, changes that impacted your day-to-day. someone new joining your team, someone adding more calendar events to your already packed day, those small changes that affect you on a personal level were a lot more impactful than a company merger where you might not actually feel those effects on a personal level. This is also leading to a surge capacity. A surge capacity is a collection of adaptive systems that, both mental and physical, help humans adapt to these changes and process these changes on a day-to-day. In so-called normal times, most people function with a regular amount of change. Being forced to undertake an overwhelming amount of change is just something that the surge capacity just doesn't have capacity for. So after years of constant change, years meaning the past 2 years of lockdown, consumers are ready to come out of their work lives, come out of their home lives with a new push for normalcy into a re-entry period of definitive action. I also want to highlight, going back to that notion that change is also highlighted for individuals on a deeper level, that employees are in fact impacted 2.5 times more for smaller change than bigger change. So going back to that idea of a company merger, that might not affect employees at all, but something like a meeting that they weren't prepared for will take them 3 times as much time to get back on track. And that's something to note in your day-to-day as a business, and also in your personal life when you throw a hot route or call an audible to one of your friends who might not be prepared for this new change. So how can we combat this idea of definitiveness that we're looking for, or change rather, that we're after? The click and collect model has become so popular throughout the pandemic. We'll only see further adoption and increase in interest from consumers of all demographics and psychographics, particularly for the regulators who need that certainty. In 2024, regulators will adopt for curbside delivery for items left on auto order, or those pesky forgotten items that they might not be able to get on Amazon. Forgotten family essentials like toilet paper, coffee, medicine, all will look for a speedy and seamless delivery that will point to click and collect as the go-to model for the regulators. These are just some brands we wanted to highlight who are doing a great job of click and collect. Grab, RoboSmart, and last but certainly not least, GoPuff. I'm from New York, and we see a ton of GoPuff in New York, and this has been one of those sort of rivals to the deli. I often take trips to the deli to get anything very quickly when I'm on a hunch. But GoPuff is sort of taking that space of in between a deli and a Target, where you can safely order things as you're walking down the street. And oftentimes I'll leave my apartment and go through GoPuff, and I'll order it on my phone and pick it up as soon as I get there. Again, a level of definitiveness and confirmation that pairs technology with confirmation. Another rise for this group that we want to highlight is V-commerce. We've all understood the growth of e-commerce. Some of us are starting to take stabs at S-commerce, which is social commerce. But now we're looking at V-commerce, which is voice commerce. So think about the rise in Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, these platforms that allow people to connect by voice, that allow them to connect by sound. This is giving rise and new opportunity for brands to sell new products. And although it's not always about selling new products, it's about engaging in a new space. V-commerce is slowly becoming a new reality. These new innovations at home are taking shape in television and entertainment as well. Experiments with shoppable TV formats are currently in markets, allowing consumers to link directly to products after watching a streaming television show or even an advert that was natively disguised on TikTok. A great case study of this is Telfar TV. Telfar is a New York-based brand that was incubated at CFDA, and last year they launched Telfar TV, which is a live shopping platform where they bring members of the community into their studio and have them host a show. They put the latest garments on them, and it operates as like a tease because a lot of these products were never seen before. And in this shopping format, people can buy these new products directly from the community members of Telfar. It's not about influencers, it's not about celebrities, it's about community building and allowing those to shop through the voices that they hear when they're out in public, when they're online in their Twitter Spaces, and now it's taking shape in a way that they can consume. And by 2024, smart scanning will definitely, in fact, become one of the go-tos for the regulators. The pandemic drove rapid adoption for contactless service, such as QR codes, going back to that QR code that we scanned earlier. And again, I hope you all do take a peek at that white paper. But these QR codes will become such an integral part of our day-to-day lives. And why is that? These links, these modules, these graphics bring you to a definitive space. It connects you directly to something that you want to see. You know, oftentimes, what the QR code is going to get you, whether it's a menu at a restaurant or even a set of information that you need to know as you step into a new space like a trade show. One app I want to highlight is Scanned It, which is an AR app that enables shoppers to quickly find items on packed store shelves. New retailers are opening apps like Scanned It to help shoppers find products when they walk into stores, whether it's a Costco, the BJ's, or other large format stores like Walmart or Target. These new AR and VR apps, combined with QR codes and companies like Flowcode, will make the shopping experience a lot more interconnected, seamless, and trustworthy. Moving on to the next cohort, the connectors. We've all seen the stats. The younger generations are having fewer children, they're opting for roommates over relationships, and they're job hopping and quitting, a la the great resignation that many businesses have suffered from over the past year and a half. In reality, society lies at the intersection of major value shifts and lack of social services, rising inflation, and lack of wages. For the connectors, this period of creative destruction is resulting in entrepreneurship. A record 1.4 million business applications were filed in the US in 2021. With the majority of these coming from people under 40, I think it's worth noting that this new sense of entrepreneurship is what drives the connectors. This new sense, this new push for the American dream is what's driving the connectors. However, as we push forward into this new sense of connectedness and try to resume some sense of normalcy, it's important to note that there won't be a work-life balance. It's not about splitting your time and turning off. For the connectors, it's about a work-life blend and making your job, your work, and your responsibilities work with your passions and priorities. Pandemic productivity led to burnout. While companies adopted new technologies and processes, the cost of growth was the mental well-being of a lot of their employees. For the connectors, this drove a sense of nihilism, having to push through things, having to get work done, having to do these things that felt so minute in the grand scheme of things when you're facing a global pandemic. In China, Gen Z labeled this desire lying flat, a push against cultural pressures to succeed at a high level. And for the connectors, it's not about being great, it's not about being the best, it's about being content, it's about being satisfied, it's about being fulfilled. Japan's youth, known as the Satori Sedai, the enlightened generation, have grown up watching previous generations burn themselves out in the pursuit of greatness and career advancement. The Satori generation has rebelled by creating a new work-life balance commodity, as many known commonly in their space, the work-life blend. In many cultures across the globe, not just here in the US, also in Japan, also in India, other parts of South Asia, and also South America and Africa, where there are high percentages of youth population, they're taking a step back from this idea of forced entrepreneurship. It's becoming more creative, it's becoming more passion-driven, more intentional, and more definitive. We've tracked how millennials have explored the idea of rental economy since 2016, from leasing cars to co-living and even renting out their wardrobes on various platforms. But in 2024, millennials will look for an even deeper level of circularity, interconnectedness, and sustainability. New platforms are rising that offer a co-buying process, especially real estate. Things that were once a single-use purchase are now becoming group purchases. And this group, the most connected group ever, are letting this inspire their purchasing habits. I definitely want to highlight the stat here that there's been a 70% increase in homes of co-buyers with last names between 2024 and 2021. Meaning that a lot of things that we think to be a solo decision will be a group decision. The connectors are just that. They're connected on many levels, and not just through their consumption, but through their ability to create families and create communities. This seismic shift from the connectors is not just about salary hopping. Again, it isn't just about that sense of being great or advancement. It really ties into their ability and their want for fulfillment. The Great Resignation continues to rise. More than 24 million people in the US quit their jobs between April and September in 2021. In the UK, volunteer resignations were significantly higher, over 30% than they were in the same period in 2019. So how do companies retain employees and drive loyalty? Obviously you want loyalty from your consumers, but how do you also build that loyalty into your team, build that loyalty into your work community? It's really about creating that flexible work environment. Like I said, that work-life blend, not balance. More than half of millennials, 58% in fact, and adult Gen Zers, 52%, said success in their careers depends on updating their skills frequently. And so for companies, instilling that level of loyalty, instilling that trust in your work community is about upskilling, not just in their job, but in other things that matter. How can you instill some new life skills? How can you allow them to connect outside of work? Is it a group yoga session? Is it team building exercises where the high level executives stay at home? There are things that we can do that offer a level of connection and also a level of value that provide some upskilling that the connectors will appreciate, which will in turn build their loyalty towards your company and help them stay for longer. Going back to this group being the most connected purchasers ever, we're seeing a huge spike in the idea of resale as a service. We already know about subscription as a service. We're starting to see other ideas like resale as a service percolate and grow with this idea of sustainability for consumers that want to shop more circular, in a more circular fashion. Resale as a service helps brands and consumers retain their shopping ecosystem and not lose business to secondhand markets, like StockX, for instance, or The RealReal. And so for businesses, implementing something as simple as a buyback program, implementing a service where you can allow your consumers to return something for a discount is definitely going to resonate. Even if it's not an official service, those programs are very integral to the connectors as they opt to stay connected to your brand and connected to the products and services that they care about the most. Here are a few brands that we want to highlight that do a great job of creating a circular shopping environment, but also just doing resale as a service well. I'm sure many of you are familiar with all of these, but just some to highlight. Trove, US-based ThredUp, and last but certainly not least, Carefor. Sometimes sales are in small details. For the connectors, cost per wear, sustainability, and authentication details on labels and hang tags are value drivers that result in their ability and willingness to a purchase from your brand. For brands, this is a chance to operate track and trace, whether it's a QR code on the tag, a little bit more information offered on the website, different ways that your business can offer ways for the consumer to authenticate their products. If they're going to be shopping more sustainably, which means in a more circular fashion, they want to know it's real. They want to know the product that they're purchasing is authenticated. There are endless knockoffs, and in fact, a lot of consumers are embracing knockoff culture. So for your business, it's important to think about how you can engineer some of this into your marketing, into your communication, and into your product development. As part of the creative disruption model, the connectors are looking to rewrite what they gain and achieve when shopping from brands. In 2024, this will lead to a rise in consumer stakeholding, which will actually lead to consumers co-creating and co-collaborating with brands on more products, and even helping brands source and participate in things that we call nearshoring, which is about finding and doing things more locally rather than outsourcing to foreign countries and different markets. For some connectors, the idea of ownership is decentralized, meaning the company is governed by a community, not a singular entity, organization, or firm. It's a collective decision-making process. Decentralized brands and business models are a key investment for this a key investment and a key priority for this cohort. I keep mentioning the metaverse and Web3 and the rise of this new iteration of the internet, and we think about the connectors. This is about the decentralized brand, or what we call the headless brand. And that's what we're but we're calling the DAO. These decentralized, autonomous organizations that allow communities to govern themselves. It's not about having a few decision makers, it's about allowing governance that allows everyone to participate and take part in the decisions that affect the community that they participate in and care about. Now I want to dive into the memory makers. I myself identify with the memory makers because for the memory makers, it's about creating lasting moments. It's about being mindful. It's about living presently. And I think for a lot of us, there hasn't been a lot of memory making, just a lot of tragic moments that we like to forget. And so as you look to 2024, the memory makers are going to take very intentional steps to create a lifestyle that allows them to create moments worth remembering and worth highlighting in their content. Oh. Bear with me, I'm sorry. Slide was a little out of order. For the memory makers, the concept of family and community is being rewritten. For a lot of us, we were stuck in the house with our family or with our roommates that were forced to be our family. For the memory makers, getting back into the physical space is about recreating our environments and recreating our communities that we want to grow and live with. One stat that I really want to highlight is the fact that almost 16 million adults aged 55 and older are childless, and we expect this to increase. The memory makers aren't pressed to create families the traditional way. They're pressed to create families and communities through products, through experiences that allow them to remember these moments. And this isn't the traditional partnership of getting married or living with a partner. It's actually about doing something that creates a moment of awe. And for these memory makers, awe experience will be one of the biggest engagement strategies for brands to tap into. In the US, Pew Research Center found that 38% of adults between the ages of 25 and 54 were unpartnered. So again, as we think about how we look to adapt and engage with this cohort of memory makers, we should really highlight that their ability to create families and their willingness to entertain the traditional notion of families is changing. I also want to highlight that by 2030, there will be approximately 2.4 million LGBTQ people aged 50 and older, which points again to this reimagined family lifestyle and family dynamic that the memory makers are pushing forward. These memory makers are also rethinking work values. During the first 24 months of the pandemic, people added work activities to keep them connected at home. These virtual happy hours, multiple team meetings, and also workshops drove a highly collaborative culture. However, according to Harvard Business Review, collaborative work, like I mentioned before, this overstimulation spent from time on email, IM, phone, and video calls has risen 50%. And now all of these notifications and all of these pings consume 85% of their workday. So if you think about your day-to-day and how much time you spend actually communicating and actually engaging and responding to an email, or even thinking about what your response is going to be, or even thinking about how you're going to approach a meeting, that takes up a lot of your time. And so this idea of collaborative and creative workflow will also impact these memory makers as they look for ways to pare back that overstimulation and refocus on things that will actually improve their work and improve their personal lives. This cohort will also transform their quest for perfection to a quest for being present. They'll declutter their social and work lives, and they'll also invest in time abundance, as in more awe experiences, as in more things that help them create memories that they want to remember. Now, when it comes to aging, this isn't about vanity. It's about expending their healthy lifespans. I know for some, the idea of longevity is a far-out thought, but for this group, they're embracing the idea of longevity. And it's not about living to be 120. It's about expanding those healthier years of your lifestyle. Whether it's spending time with loved ones, investing in new hobbies, or simply finding moments to daydream, products that allow the memory makers to age well are going to pick up steam and definitely be prioritized moving forward. Other brands worth noting, such as OneSkin, develop products based on skin-specific DNA markers. And so for food and beverage businesses, it's important to think about how you can personalize your products. Outdoor brands, how can you personalize your products and give people time and space to be mindful when they use your products and allow them not to just make memories, but to age well while they're using their products. When you think about how you want your business to integrate with the life of the consumer, you want them to grow up with your brand. And if they can age well with your products, it'll definitely have a place in their hearts that will lead them to come back again and again. In addition to aging well, memory makers are also focused on time wealth, where accruing moments are the ultimate luxury. Reflections, being present, and also thinking positively about the future, tragic optimism, not toxic positivity, is definitely something that will resonate with this group. US-based No Watch, whose website landing page asks users to please take a moment to notice how you feel, is an awe-wearable brand that harnesses the technology of mindfulness to improve your mindset. So when you think about how your brand can also create products that create a more active and healthy lifestyle, think about how you can also question and probe your consumers, how they can be a little bit more in tune with their feelings and how they feel, not just when they're consuming products, but also when they're experiencing your brand, both online and also in the physical space. Major hotel brands are also investing in this through wellness retreats, yoga seminars, and other ways. The Four Seasons in New York has employed a very specific set of wellness specialists, from practitioners, including hypnotherapists, astrologists, and even a clairvoyant, who are permanently on site to support guests in their awe experience of aging well while they're traveling. And last but certainly not least, one investment that we want brands to take heed to is the care economy. Again, invest in products and services that will help your brand tell your consumer for 2024 that you care. Not just about how they spend their money, but also how they're living and how they're feeling. The C-List in the UK is the first beauty platform aimed at people with cancer. Now, typically those with cancer are so focused on their survival that they don't have time to focus on their beauty regimen. They don't have time to focus on some of the more vanity-centric wellness platforms that a lot of us do. And so for the C-List, this is about creating an online library of resources and suggested routines, and even ingredients to avoid during their troubling time and their battle with cancer. And so just take a page out of their book and figure out how you can engage some of these consumer groups that you may not have thought about. Some sick and ill, and even some disabled groups that you might not have focused on. Take some time and consider how the care economy impacts them as well. COA, which is a mental health gym, is another idea, another care economy platform and experience that is really making strides in pushing this idea of memory making in the digital and physical space as people look for ways to connect their mental health with their community and with people that they care about, to speak about it in a way that's not so stigmatized. Their dinner party is another virtual hangout that allows people to have a dinner with each other and talk about traumatic experiences. We've all had virtual happy hours that might seem a little pointless. We don't know how to kick off a conversation. We don't even know how to connect really. What the dinner party does is it brings together a group of those experiencing trauma to bond a bit and talk about what they're going through and to connect with those who are experiencing something similar. And so this community-built platform is also taking the care economy to a new level. And now brands are getting involved in sponsoring some of these events, both for their employees and also for those who are just in their community and could use a little bit of a mental health boost. Last but certainly not least, I want to talk about the new sensorialist. As you can see through this VR headset, the new sensorialists are extremely online. They want to feel everything in every sense possible. This quintessential hybrid consumer wants the best of both worlds. They want that digital experience, they want the AR, the XR, and the VR, and they also want to be able to do something in the physical space. They want that at home, and they also want that in stores. Now, what will help drive the opportunities for the new sensorialists? As society pushes further into the metaverse and Web3, and crypto becomes more widely accepted, both from businesses and on a more cultural cachet level. People will tap back into this idea of digital twins, where they create themselves online. And it's growing in demand, like I mentioned, as some consumers look to recreate themselves in the physical through surgeries, others tie into digital twins and other avatar type experiences that help them create their world in Web3. So for the new sensorialist, Web3 will be a great touch point. And for a lot of brands, it's not about diving into the metaverse. Sometimes it's about exploring Web 2.5, which is the gray area. A lot of brands aren't ready to just dive into the metaverse or Web3, but it's about engaging with consumers who are and letting them know authentically you understand where the internet's going and you're aware of what they want. For this group, it's also important to think about how you can engage with them through digital collectibles. This idea of POAPs, or proof of attendance protocol, is also rising with this group. So for brands, having an event or having a get-together, an activation, anything that brings people together, you can offer a token such as a POAP, which is a free NFT that allows consumers to have a little takeaway. It's a similar, almost digital tote bag, if you will, that you can give your consumer that they can keep in their wallet and always look back on. And in a sense, they can connect with others who also have this POAP. And so for brands who don't want to have the heavy lift of going out and minting NFTs or doing something that feels inauthentic, a POAP is a little token that you can build that works very well, very seamlessly with a lot of marketing communication and also resonates with the extremely online sensorialists. Actronica is a new platform based in France that's connecting with consumers through a new technology called Skinetic, which makes VR feel more immersive. So if you think about using VR, you don't often think about it as a touch experience. But with a Actronica, we're trying to allow for a more touch-led experience through VR. And so for brands, if you think about connecting that space in the physical and the digital, brands like Actronica will allow you to connect with the new sensorialist in a way that feels very innovative, inspiring, also creating a moment of awe in a way that they might not have expected. It's also worth noting for this very extremely online cohort that the success of products on TikTok is also leading them to buy products in stores. And so for brands, simply put, do some social listening. Pay attention to what's happening on the apps. A lot of brands, especially heritage consumer brands and a lot of older retailers, are operating in spaces and building these new departments in their store that are taking viral moments from TikTok and putting them directly smack dab in the stores. Barnes & Noble, for instance, did that, and it's led to a rise in what's been called book talk, where TikTok users are seeing specific books posted online with reviews and they're selling out in stores. And stores like Barnes & Noble are now giving Amazon's book division a run for their money as a lot of consumers flock to the physical space for these viral to VM moments. Amazon also unveiled its internet famous storefront in late 2021 using social listening tools from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and also Twitter to update its product offering and product assortment. So all of this social listening is uber crucial to the new sensorialists who are online and oftentimes shopping from meme makers. It's not just about buying from brands at this point. Sometimes their favorite brand is their favorite meme maker. And so if you think about how a streetwear brand was once the most disruptive thing and how the push for Supreme to be mass media, now these meme makers that were once niche are becoming the tastemakers and the innovators of tomorrow. Target is also staying ahead of this viral curve with its beauty products with a dedicated viral beauty product section on its website. So you don't always have to do this in the physical space. Sometimes it's about adding a viral product tab to your website or even adding that to your e-commerce or s-commerce shopping platform, whichever you use, just to allow the consumer to know that you know what's going on online. You're listening to them, you're listening to their communities, and you know what they want. And last but not least, I also want to highlight the staggering growth of BNPL, buy now, pay later, which a lot of these new sensorialists who tend to be Gen Zers, younger, or sometimes even Gen Alpha, are gravitating to. This cohort didn't like credit cards, they didn't like debt, they don't like student loans, but buy now, pay later, which is essentially credit, the wolf in sheep's clothing, is really picking up steam with them. And not just with clothes. Obviously, there are certain instances where buy now, pay later is low-hanging fruit, typically for apparel and consumer products. But there are other industries that are also experimenting with this format. For instance, Eat Now, Pay Later is rising in Australia, and it gives consumers the chance to use an app called Payout to go out to eat with their friends and pay it in 4 installments, which sounds like an interesting idea, could be very dangerous, but if you think about wanting to have a lavish dinner or get an experience, an awe experience, if you will, somewhere where you may never have had an opportunity to before, this buy now, pay later format will definitely be something that resonates in 2024 and beyond. Now, I know that was a lot to take in, but there are four key points that I want to leave you with. First, focus on community. Community commerce is here to stay. Support the consumers who are around your community, in your community, and adjacent community to gain market share. Also, invest in the care economy. Invest in the wellness of your community, not just the wellness of your brand. From the mood market through to helping relieve stress and other things that might not seem like a big deal actually matter. And taking those steps let your consumers know that you care about them on a longevity level. And third, invest in the metaverse, but also take your time with it. I just mentioned Web 2.5. Web 3 is obviously one of the buzziest marketing words that we've heard in the past 2 to 3 years. But for everyone, it doesn't make sense. So explore what that means to you and do it in a way that feels authentic, it feels genuine, and it feels like it's on par for your consumer. And last, but certainly not least, accelerate at pace and scale. I noted that a lot of businesses digitize 20 to 25 times faster than they normally would have. A lot of businesses pushed online for e-commerce and s-commerce way faster than they normally have. But it's important as we move closer to 2024 to do this at a scale and pace that's sustainable for both your business and your consumers at a holistic level. And with that, that is my time. Thank you so very much for rocking with me. I hope that wasn't too much to bear. I would like to open the floor to any questions that anyone has. Give me your toughest shot. If not, I'm also here for the next 2 days and would love to chit chat. Again, my name is Q, just the letter, for anyone that wants to come up and say hi or has any questions. But any questions? Which one? Boom. And again, this QR code will take you to a very robust, oh, do you have a question? And multiple iterations. So we have a full report, that's the Future Consumer 2024, but this white paper is a very, very robust spin on the paper with global examples and case studies and other ways that you can engage with this in a way that might make more sense for you. So definitely take a peek at this QR code, scan it, download it, pop in your information, and enjoy.